Okay, and now I'm going to introduce our two panelists this morning. Oh, and before I get started, so because this is a webinar, we can't show people's videos and we're not going to enable the microphone. So if you have any questions, just put it in the Q&A at the bottom. And what's great about a webinar is you can upvote people's questions so we can know what your most pressing desires are in getting answered. And EE and Pat are going to have their conversation for about an hour, and then we'll have 15 minutes of Q&A. So the upvoting is especially important for our time limit this morning. And oh, we've got people from Central Illinois, so welcome. All right, and here we go. What's on your bookshelf? A celebration of picture books with authors Pat Zietlow Miller and EE Charlton-Trujillo. Pat Zietlow Miller knew she wanted to be a writer ever since her 7th grade English teacher read her paper about square dancing skirts out loud in class and said, "This is the first time anything a student has written has given me chills. Thanks, Mrs. Mueller, you rock." Pat started out as a newspaper reporter and wrote about everything from dart ball and deer hunting to diets and decoupage. Then she joined an insurance company and edited its newsletter and magazine. Now she writes insurance information by day and children's books by night. She has 11 picture books currently available and 11 more coming out over the next few years. Her picture book, Be Kind, was on the New York Times bestseller list for 10 weeks, and Sophie Squash won a Golden Kite Award, an Ezra Jax Keats New Writer Honor, and a Charlotte Zolotow Honor. Pat has one wonderful husband, 2 delightful daughters, and 2 pampered cats. She lives in Madison, Wisconsin. You can follow Pat on Twitter at Pat Z Miller or Instagram at Pat Z Mill. She also blogs about children's books with other kidlit creators at Picture Book Builders. Welcome, Pat. And so now we have EE Charlton-Trujillo, a Mexican-American author, filmmaker, and youth literacy activist. Having spoken at nearly every major book festival and educational conference in the United States, the small town South Texas native is considered one of the most inspiring and dynamic speakers advocating for the empowerment of youth through story. They have written 3 young adult novels and 1 middle grade novel, most notably Fat Angie, an ALA Stonewall Award winner, and prizefighter En Mi Casa, a Parents' Choice Silver Honor winner. Trujillo's co-authored picture books, Lupe Lopez Rockstar Rules, will be published in 2022 and will be followed by Lupe Lopez Reading Rockstar in 2023. Trujillo's accolades exist beyond the page. Their award-winning documentary, At Risk Summer, explores what it means to be a young person on the fringe as told by youth, educators, and multiple award-winning authors for kids. From the experience of making that film, Trujillo co-founded Never Counted Out, a nonprofit that cultivates reading and storytelling with at-risk youth, thus promoting Trujillo's ultimate mission to excite the ganas in young people to never feel silenced. Trujillo holds a bachelor's degree in English from Texas A&M University Corpus Christi and a master's in filmmaking from Ohio University. Check out their website at bigdreamswrite.com. And we are so excited to have both of you here. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Pat, and welcome EE from the Norfolk Library to the Norfolk Library, and welcome all of our participants this morning. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, we're so happy to be here.
We are elated, and if you noticed, my bio was longer because her book list was longer. So I had to find some way to make up the gap between the two of us.
I was just sitting over here feeling inferior, so that's okay.
That's okay. And little that people know that we met actually, because when I went on that tour and made At Risk Summer, I actually stayed in your home. You didn't even know me.
Nope.
You gave me a couch as I was traveling across America. And I said, "Hey, I'd like to interview you." You're like, "For what?" And I'm like, "About your stories." And we sat and talked about young people and about writing. And it was like I had found my long lost Caucasian sister. And who would know that all these years later, you and I would be on this panel and that we would have co-authored what would be 4 picture books coming.
It was kind of like instant friendship, just add water. It was pretty cool.
It was just add water. And then there was all this bubbly, fizzy stuff that happened. So I don't know.
So yeah, we've got 4 picture books coming out that we wrote jointly. And we're going to be talking a lot about picture books today, not just the ones that I've written or we've written, but ones we love by tons of other people. And we're going to kind of do it in a conversation. I'm going to ask E questions. They're going to ask me questions. We're both going to probably interrupt each other a lot. And we're going to share a ton of picture books that we both love. And just so you don't have to frantically take notes if you don't want to, we will have a list of them when we're done that the conference organizers will email out to you. So you have a list of everything we mentioned, and then I'll put it out on my Twitter feed too. So should we begin?
We should totally begin.
All right. So I get to ask the first question.
Oh, no.
So, like they said, E is known for her young adult novels. These are two of them, Fat Angie 1, Fat Angie 2, Fat Angie 3 comes out in November. So I want to know what made you, since you've been so successful in the young adult writing space, what made you think, gee, I want to, actually try to write a picture book? Because they're very different things. I would never try to write a YA novel.
Yeah, what's interesting is I always would hear things, you would meet people along the way, especially at conferences, and they say, I have a grandkid, I want to write a picture book, or, oh, you'd meet so-and-so, and they said, I run, how hard could that be? And coming from a poetry background, that's where I had really started, and thinking about the compression of how, yes, poetry can be, it can be verbose in some ways, but there's this really specificity to it and I think that was exciting to me when after I got to know you, and I would listen to you talk about picture books, and because I didn't read a lot of them as a child,
I didn't really either.
Yeah. I was a total weather nerd. I read about how do supercells form, like literally though, in nonfiction, and not a very interesting way. And, but when, but anyway, in having a friendship with you and listening to some of the work you created and having that natural sort of poetic background, I just felt really kind of like, I felt this shift, and I thought, I have something I want to say, I think, in a way that I haven't before. And I'd already written middle grade, I'd written young adult. And then I realized what I really needed to do though was the work. And the work was, I came to you and I said, listen, I have some ideas and I'm going to write some picture books. And you laughed at like that. That was really great. That's what everybody says.
Everybody thinks they can write a picture book.
Everyone thinks they can write one. And I said, but no. And I was a student. I think you remember, I was a good student. I said, just give me 20 books you think I have to read to understand structure or character, whatever. And you did. And he was like, wink, wink, but then it was the beginnings then of saying, okay, if these are the 20, and Zombies in Love is like, that was like the one that structurally, and Tia Issa Wants a Car. Yeah, she has the zombies. And that one for structure, it's just so, you can't get it back in now. See?
No, I can't.
Zombies in Love, it was so great for structure and humor and character. And then, then I read Tia Issa Wants a Car by Meg Medina. And again, for me, being Mexican-American, having that sense of culture and flavor, that wasn't one in the list at the time, but it was one that I went to. And so I thought to myself, this is really, picture books can be poetry. They can be these little short vignettes, but it's about specificity. It goes back to that, which I know you're going to talk about a lot. And so, yeah, so I felt like there were some stories I wanted to tell to the younger people, because I feel like, I think, oh my gosh, planting those seeds with young kids and getting them to create a more kind and compassionate world, why not? So yeah.
Awesome. Cool.
Awesome. It's your turn now.
Yeah, I'm ready.
I even have my paper. You ready?
I'm ready.
So you're known for breaking into the world of picture books with Sophie Squash. To this day, I can't look at a squash and not bring it home with me. And name it. Thanks a lot, Zeke. I'm still naming I can't eat my vegetables anymore.
I don't know why you'd ever think that you should like bring the squash home and name it. Like, who would do that? I just don't understand why. Yeah.
I literally send her pictures of me holding squash, and it's like my best long lost friend. So now, with that said, was the path to publication? Would you say it was a quick process for you? And how did your life change after the publication of Sophie Squash?
Okay, so Sophie Squash was my very first book that I sold. And I had known I wanted to write picture books like pretty much since I was 19. I wrote one in college. It was awful. It was before the internet. I couldn't Google anything. So I like mailed it off to some publisher's address I found in a book, got a rejection, and thought I tried. But then 20 years later, when I was no longer in college and the internet existed, I was like, okay, I really want to do this. I love picture books. They make me happier than anything else. So I'm really going to try. So it took me 4 years, of like reading every picture book I could get my hands on, writing really awful drafts of picture book manuscripts, and doing a lot of submitting and getting a lot of rejections. So 4 years, 126 rejections. I sold Sophie Squash. Not all 126 rejections were for Sophie. There were lots.
Wait, how many rejections?
126.
And did you feel each of those rejections a little bit?
Well, you know, I've met authors who say I cry every time I get a rejection. And honestly, like, no, I just looked, I can be really like tenacious and committed when I decide I want to do something. And so I just looked at it like as part of the process. There was only one rejection I remember, and this was even after I sold Sophie Squash, where I actually like almost cried. I didn't cry, it was close. But mostly I was just like, okay, well, that didn't work. And I just kept going. I always figured, and when I talk to kids at schools, I say a rejection just means not yet. It's not ready yet, you know, or it's not for that particular editor. So I think if you can look at rejection that way, rather than, you know, I'm a failure as a human being and I have no talent, you know, you're going to do a lot better. So it was a 4-year process, 126 rejections. And then Sophie came, and, you know, it wasn't like, people sometimes think, well, as soon as they get a book published, like my life will be so different. But, you know, you're still you still have all the faults you had before you had a book published, you know, and even though you're excited, the vast majority of the world doesn't care. You know, your book comes out and things just keep like going on. So it was cool because, I mean, Sophie Squash did well and it won some awards. And so, I mean, it was definitely a very positive thing, but it's not like you know, the core of the universe didn't shift or the poles didn't realign.
Are you sure?
Well, at least that I heard, you know, I don't always watch the news, so maybe I missed it. But anyway, okay, so I want to know from E, when you write for older readers and now that you're writing for younger readers, and we should probably say we've got 2 books coming out that I think you mentioned. They're about a girl named Lupe Lopez, and there's book 1 and book 2, but then we also have 2 more books coming out after that that are kind of girl power books, not about Lupe, but just in general. So
and also about looking at what does girl mean too in that power.
Yes. Yes. So how do you approach writing for older readers differently than writing for younger readers?
You know, it wasn't something I think I was ever really conscious of about how do you approach this now. I mean, I know there are hard, fast rules, and that would be fibbing. I mean, content you wouldn't put in a middle grade that you might put in a YA. And although we are kind of stretching to a upper middle grade. And then you look at picture books and you think about content. And we're going to talk a little bit about that later too, when we go through our books and certain books we're going to talk about and hold up about how do you approach content that might be harder with young readers. Right. And that there are ways we can do that. There's often this discussion about, well, that topic should be off limits and my kid can't handle it at this age. It's all about how we approach it, right? I mean, I think you'd agree there. And so that's something we're going to talk about. But I think for me, you know, it's about not talking down to children. It's about sort of inhabiting that spirit of what that younger, if I'm writing, you know, from a first point of view or this and that. And then the other thing is, you know, I think it's interesting, you know, we talk about, you know, the age old thing is chicken and an egg. And now that I've written picture books and especially written with you, it's actually made my novels better. Because I've become a tighter writer and I can feel it. And I know you just take like glee with that, but I've
converted you to the dark side.
It is a very dark side of tighter writing. And it's about, again, you know, when you're in a novel, you have 50,000 plus words if you want, right? Depending on the kind of novel, you know, obviously a bit less for middle grade, but depending on the kind of middle grade, but you know, it's like, I think the approach is really I want to infuse excitement. I want to infuse energy, and those are all, and I want to infuse questions, and I want young people to not feel alone. And all of those things I do in YA or middle grade, I can do that in picture books too. And it's about the approach of topic. It's about the approach of character. But the thing that you know, I learned from you, you know, as in friendship. And then of course, just as I was growing in my own process was, I really learned how much I like it when things are specific and that things are, you know, it works, you know, stories that roll, you know. All right. Enough about me. Let's talk about you. Are you ready?
Yep.
You sure?
Yeah.
All right. From inception to completion. You ready? This is important.
Okay.
What are 5 fabulous do's and 3 don'ts to creating an exceptional picture book?
Okay, so have given this a little bit of thought. When you're creating an exceptional picture book, like I mentioned before, you really, really need to read as many picture books as you possibly can. One, your brain soaks it all up like a sponge and you become a much better writer. Two, it shows you what the market is. And three, you get blown away by the talent of all the people that are making things, making picture books. So you want to read a ton. And then I always tell people, like, sort out, like, of everything you read, which ones did you love? Which ones do you want to hug? Because you should want to hug a really good picture book. And then analyze them as to why you like them. Because that's going to tell you probably the kind of book that you want to write if you're a writer. And then you want to, like, do a ton of revision. Sophie Squash went through probably 10 versions before it got sold. And then it went through 3 runs of revision after it sold, because you can always make what you write better. And then you just want to, like, stay the course, because, like, nothing is easy that's worth having. And so some people give up way too soon, and you don't want to do that. And then in terms of what you don't want to do is you don't want to write to trends. You want to write stuff that really matters to you. And the picture books I love are picture books that someone wrote because they were important to them. And then if you love it, chances are someone's going to love it too, because it's going to have that universal element that anybody can relate to. You don't want to rush to try to get your book published. You might think it's ready, but if you're new, it's probably not. And it took me, I sent out some horrendous drafts early on that weren't ready, but I thought they were. And then the other thing that you don't want to do is, when you get feedback, you don't want to get defensive. You want to say, what can I learn from this? How can I make my writing better? And it's only going to help you in the long run.
Wow. That was like the fast and the furious 5 do's, 3 don'ts. That was wild.
Yeah. I had notes, I wrote it down.
Oh, so there was a little prep. Is that what you're saying?
There was some prep, yeah.
Notice no notes here, not even on my hands.
I don't believe you. I saw your papers before.
No, those papers were just to read questions.
Okay, all right. So now we're both going to talk about this one. I mentioned that a really good picture book is a picture book that you want to hug. And so many picture books come out each year. And of the ones that come out, while there's many I like, there are very few that, like, I truly, truly want to hug. So right. What makes a picture book really stand out to you? What is the criteria for a picture book that you want to hug?
Wow. Picture book that I want to hug. I mean, I do love musical language. So I definitely think that, and also I think another piece of criteria that makes a picture book that I want to hug is it's reached inside of me in some way. It's either made me, laugh or want to cry or cry. It creates that. It's like music, how music reaches into us, right? Like, we hear a song, we want to dance, we want to get with someone, we want to break up with someone, we want to have all these experiences. And I think it'll always, a beautiful, wonderful, well-crafted picture book creates this sort of, wealth of feeling. And yeah, what were you say?
And for me, I've never thought of it in terms of music, but for me, it's a picture book that like reaches into my soul. And I feel like it could have been written about me on some level, or there's that universal element of, I've experienced that in my life, and the audience that we're writing for are kids who read those picture books. They haven't lived as much life as you or I have, but those feelings are universal. And even if you're 4 or if you're 94, you've had that moment where you felt left out, where you felt misunderstood, where you've been, like, amazingly happy, where you've cried. And if you've got a picture book that can tap into that, that's what it does. I'm like, okay, so this is Bear is a Bear, brand new, by Jonathan Stutzman.
I saw that. I haven't read it yet.
It just came out, and this is one of those books where I read it and I was like, so if you can pull that off and find a book that does that, that's amazing.
See, and I was reaching for a book as you were reaching for a book, but I was only reaching.
What's your book?
Well, I know.
Well, you're sucking up now.
I know it's yours, but it was behind me, in fairness. But the reason why I'm saying this is, it's not because it's dedicated to me.
That's just a minor detail.
Just a minor detail. Hashtag promo. The truth is for a lot of reasons. One, the illustrations here, they are magic to me. They are
Eliza Wheeler.
Eliza Wheeler's illustrations are magic to me. This isn't just because it's Pat. And the other thing is the narrative. And as a grown-up, when I read this book, which would be very different for a young person, but I was going through a challenging time in my life. And it was amazing how this reached into my heart. And, it moved me. I remember I cried. And in the end, I just felt this sort of lift. And I'm telling you, this is one of those books for me that I want to hug it whenever if there's a hard day and I don't feel like I can be brave. This book makes me feel that sense of bravery. And that's what, whatever that is, whether it's a book that just makes you want to, like I said, feel absolute joy. And you just said it, young people feel that too. They're having the gamut of emotions, and why not give them a safe place to land,
Right, exactly. And that's one book where I've gotten emails from adults saying, I went to the bookstore, I bought this book for my kid, I was reading it in the checkout line, and I realized that it applied to me. And I mean, I think that's the biggest compliment that you can get, is that a book has that kind of, across the ages connection.
And that it's not exclusionary to children. Like some books, sometimes some picture books, you can understand this, right?
They're written for adults, yeah.
They're written for adults, and okay, but what if you can get both of, meet both worlds? Oh my God, what a gift as a to say that you've done both in one picture book,
Right, exactly. Okay, so let's do this one quick. What sort of picture books would you like to see more of? And I have an answer to that, so can I answer my own question first?
Yes, you may.
Okay, so I read a ton of picture book drafts before they're published because I judge contests and I go to writing conferences and I critique manuscripts. I am seeing fewer and fewer people trying to write funny picture books. Now, I'm sure they're out there, but what I tend to see is a lot of nonfiction, and nonfiction rocks, so don't get me wrong. But I'm amazed at how few manuscripts I see coming through that are funny. So I think we need more funny picture books.
Wow. See, and I didn't actually prep for this question. So now I'm like, oh, you're right. We do need more funny books. Yeah.
That's always a good default answer. You're right.
That's why I coattailed that one. I'm like, hold on, can I catch on that coattail? No, I tend to lean to books. I love a great funny book, but I do tend to lean a little bit towards books that with more serious content or whatnot. I would really like to see more books. We've had this long conversation, even in the children's lit world. I want to see more books that explore culture. I want to see more books that show us the breadth of diversity, and that word diversity can get lost sometimes. I want to see Asian American and Asian books. I want to see books that are Hmong. I want to see books that are African American, Black American. I want to see books that are Native American. I want to see books like that, because like I keep some of the ones on my list, even the reason why I got so excited when they came out was that I didn't have access to those kind of books as a kid, and now I think of the sort of the wealth of opportunity that exists in these we're making headways. But I want so many more books, because when we have those books, we can have compassion for the young person next to us who might be that book, or some version of that book, some version of that story. But we also we grow as human beings. And I think those little people that are reading these books, little people meaning children, not like children,
right,
little people who are reading books, say something. I mean, I think you're thinking something similar.
Yeah, and I think the same thing that we talked about before is that a kid can read a story that might be completely different from the experience they have lived. But there's that universal element where they go, that could be me, or I've had elements of that here. And it just broadens that understanding about how we're ultimately much more similar than we think.
Yeah, much more similar than we are different, even though we do have differences. And I just think we have to continue to create compassion and love and education and entertainment. And part of that is really diversifying those shelves and creating a sort of, I always talk about the new canon. What would that look like? And I think about books that are on shelves for young people. And what does that new canon look like? And I would love to see some more of those books where we stories and where they're normal stories. They don't always have to be about rooted in the idea, where we normalize things in a way that's like, I'm just so excited for the future of picture books. I think it's going to be so beautiful, and I'm glad to be part of it. Oh, and now we are moving to another question, and this time it is me asking you. So I hear a lot of parents say, my kids are too old for picture books. Talk about how you think picture books can work with and benefit readers of all ages.
Whenever I hear people say, well, like they ask me what I do, and I say I write picture books, and they go, oh yeah, my kids are like, they've outgrown those. It kind of makes me want to cry, because picture books are for everyone. They're great for little kids who are learning to read and want to sit on your lap and hear a story. They're awesome for that. but picture books are deeper than many people think. And kids should be continuing to read them, even as they're moving into chapter books or books that they, can read independently. And picture books are awesome to use even with older kids, middle schoolers, high schoolers, college age students, because you can use them to introduce a topic. Like, okay, this is A Ray of Light, which is a nonfiction picture book all about the science of light. And you could use this with older kids in a class to introduce the topic and then dig into it more deeply. Or in history, you could take something like, Before She Was Harriet, which is a beautiful summation of Harriet Tubman's life. Now, it's not going to tell you everything you need to know, but it gets the conversation rolling, it gets kids interested, and they can then, move on. And also picture books are great, especially with middle schoolers, for introducing hard emotional topics. You can read a book like The New Kid in Me by Jackie Robbins, or, Be Kind by me, or anything. And you can say, okay, like, let's read this story. And I've seen middle schoolers get sucked into picture books. They get a little grumpy at first because they're too old for this, but then pretty soon, like, they are in the story. And then they're talking about what would they have done if they were that character, or why do they think that character reacted the way they did? And in middle school is one of those times, when everybody's freaking out and there's friendship drama. And so there's so many ways you can work on social and emotional intelligence by reading those kids a picture book. And you can also use them with older kids to teach writing concepts. What is poetry? What is language? What is story? How does plot work? So there's just so many uses for a picture book. And I've even gotten multiple messages from, adults who have given picture books to their elderly parents or family members, and use that as a way to connect with people who, might be going through dementia or other things. It's a common grounding point. I've heard from so many people who read Sophie Squash to elderly parents, which I never expected, but is kind of heartwarming.
I love that. I didn't know that. Just when I thought I knew everything about you.
I have hidden depths.
It's true. You are a mysterious person. Will you go back to that Harriet Tubman book, please? Will you pull that up? And will you talk a little bit about what really astonished you, but that you loved about the book? We were talking about it in conversation the other day.
Yeah, I actually wrote a blog post about this because I like this book so much. A really good book usually has really good structure. And this book is structured because it's written as if Harriet is looking back on her life. It starts out when she's an elderly woman thinking back about all the different roles that she had in her life. She was a conductor on the Underground Railroad. She was a general. She was a nurse. She was a suffragist. She was a slave, and it takes her back from elderly adult to child, and talking about all the different roles that she had. And it's sort of a reverse chronological order structure, but it really gives you a lovely look at her life in a non-traditional way.
It's absolutely wonderful. If you don't have it for your classroom or library, or even in your home, you should have it.
Lisa Klein Ransom wrote the story. Her husband, James Ransom, did the illustrations.
Yeah, it's so good. It's so good. Okay, well, we're going to round 2 now at the half-hour mark. And
we're going to have to, I think, be a little more concise in our answers if we're going to get through everything.
People got all day. Come on. You're the one that I get really quick, and you're just taking all this time talking about the emotions of picture books. All right, it's your turn. You're up.
All right. So like we mentioned, E and I have picture books coming out. The very first one, Lupe Lopez, Rockstar Rules, is loosely based on an incident from your own life. And I remember when you approached me and you said, hey, this kind of happened to me. How can we make it a picture book? So tell us the story.
Well, I have to.
Oh, by the way, here's the advanced.
Do it. Rock on! You're seeing it for the first time. Lupe Lopez Rockstar Rules.
Comes out June 28th, 2022.
You can see Pat and I are actually the same person. Normally in the same place. So when I was a kid, I had the Kiss lunchbox, the metal one. I had the Kiss belt buckle. I had the Kiss medallion necklace. I had the Kiss t-shirt.
Kiss is a rock group.
Kiss is a rock group. If you don't know, Kiss, not ING, just Kiss. And I had a pair of like aviator sunglasses. So I rolled up into kindergarten thinking I was all that in a bag of chips and 2 sodas on the side, not diet. And I had a pair of, beat up pencils in my back pocket, the big ones for little kids, and I was going to be the drummer for Kiss. And I had decided this. And so I rolled up in the kindergarten first day of school with all of that swag, or it's like just rolling down the halls. And literally as I'm walking down the halls, I got called out by my name that I do not say because it's a good Southern name. And they said, take those sunglasses off. And I was like, can't do it. I'm a rock star. And next thing you know, I got bounced to the office on the first day of school because apparently I had a problem with authority. And so from that experience, I told Zeke, there's a story I always tell.
He calls me Zeke, for those of you that
I'm so
aren't
sorry,
aware. It's kind of short for Zietlow. I didn't even know.
Sorry, Pat. I told Pat, I was like, I have this idea and it's based on this experience. And, she like nodded her head at me. But as we continued to talk and I sent her a draft, I said, you should write this with me. She goes, I don't write with people. I was like, you do now.
Oh, come on. I wasn't.
So anyway, but yeah, so it came from that childhood experience. And so a lot of it is autobiographical in that sense. But of course, we brought plot and structure and fictionalized it. So but that's sort of the origin.
Okay, so what about the whole picture book creation process surprised you? This was the first time that you'd done it. You had sent me the original draft. What was harder than you thought, different than you thought?
Harder was that when you write on your own, you are right and your editor's right. But when you write with another person, now they have an opinion and you have to engage in that opinion and listen to it and not be defensive. I remember getting totally defensive. And
and I remember getting annoyed. So
yeah, she was annoyed. Like each other. Like, what do you mean? And I was like, we may be friends, but you're wrong. And then you have to say,
no, I'm not.
How many picture books did she publish? but no, I mean, that part was like, I had to grow there. And that's admittedly, I had to grow. Like we joke about it now, but in the moment, it really, kind of sucked. It didn't feel good, but we grew past it,
Yeah, we got there and it made me better too, because like you said, I was used to writing on my own and, it is so much easier when you can just make the decision and not have to like do the back and forth. So yeah, no, that was it.
But and I also want to say this before we zoom to the next one is that collaboration though, as we went further into our other books, we were able to trust I was able to trust you more. And I think you trusted me more. I don't know. I don't want to assign it to you, but also I think the stories got they got better because we bring two different things to the table. And I just think that anyone who has the opportunity to collaborate with someone who can be in sync and understands the process and is willing to do the work, I think that's a wonderful thing to have as a creator.
Yeah, and I mean it's a book that I don't think either of us would have written independently, but then coming together, we created these things that I'm really proud of.
It's fun. It's diverse. It's it's all of our books are like that though. We find a way to kind of hone in on the things that we independently celebrate. And so I'm so excited. I can't even, as you can see, I can't stand it.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of funny because you said you walked into kindergarten with all the swagger. I walked into kindergarten terrified. Like I just vividly remember being terrified. So like you had swagger. I was in the corner going like, oh my God. But
can you imagine what it would have been like with the two of us in the same kindergarten?
I would have been like, I would have given you a wide berth. I think I would have just been like, I would have admired you from a distance.
And I would have walked up to you and said, hey, you want to be in my band?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, Lupe Lopez is about a girl who thinks that she's a rock star and she gets to kindergarten and finds out that even rock stars have certain rules they have to follow, but she figures out a way to do that without sacrificing all the coolness and swagger that she has and still, being a rock star. So yeah. Okay. Let's see. So we've got the two books about Lupe and her rock starness. But then we've got two other books coming out. The first one's called A Girl Can Build Anything, and the other one does not have a title yet. And those are they're not character-driven picture books. Lupe is very driven by, it's character-driven. Lupe drives the story. She's got energy and glow, and she keeps it all going. The next two books, The Girl Can Build Anything, are more lyrical and more concept type picture books. So how was that different, working on such a different type of book after doing Lupe?
That one, it was interesting because that's definitely something that felt like going back to that poetry, what we talked about at the beginning of this conversation. And, inspired by reading an article, ironically, in Architecture Digest about some girls in Marfa, Texas who build. And even though the story isn't about those girls, but to be, that's where the kernel was coming from. And it came to me as poetry. I said, and as we worked on it together, I think we just found the difference was, character driven, you have a narrative. And when you don't have that, you're thinking, well, is the illustrator going to get it? Are they going to understand where we're going? Those were concerns I have. What about you with that one?
Well, with that one, I think when you're not writing a character driven picture book, you're looking at the beauty of the language and the feeling that it evokes. And that's what this one was, A Girl Can Build Anything, ended up being about. And so you've really got to focus on those things when it's not character driven. And I wanted to make sure that it did that. And I think we did. So.
All right, well, we're going to skip to round 3 now, which is me asking you a few questions.
All right.
And because we got to get to
remember what they are. So
click, tick, tick, tick. We got to get to some books here.
Yep, let's do it.
Okay, but first, what have you learned about creating story by writing with another person, and advice you would offer anyone who's considering collaboration on a picture book?
Okay, so like we talked about, collaboration, I think, was a little harder for both of us than we thought it might be. You're not always going to agree. And I think, to every writer brings their own approach, to how, like, when do they feel comfortable sharing, early on or not until every comma is perfect. And so I think you need to have some discussions beforehand about, like, how's this going to work? What are we going to do when we disagree? How are we going to resolve it? So yeah, I think good communication is the only way around. And, just make sure, I think it helps a lot that if you really like the person you're collaborating with, like, we always had that, like, friendship baseline that, I think kept us going even when we were, like, slightly peeved with each other.
I love it. Slightly peeved.
Slightly peeved.
I love that. It's great. I was like, I was pissed. No, just kidding.
I was peeved.
I just had to amp it up for you. Now here's the
writers don't say pissed. Okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. Peeved.
Yeah, peeved.
Don't worry. I would never have used the other word in an actual school visit, and so I should not use it here. So something that's really specific, though, about your experience is that now you've written several sequels, right? You're in the process of sequels. Can you talk a little bit about any surprises in writing sequels, things to be aware of for people who, they're like, well, I'm just trying to write the one, but imagine you're writing a sequel.
Okay, so I think, first of all, some people go into writing picture books thinking, I see this as a 7-part series. I've got the first 3 books written. I've got the concepts for the next 4 fleshed out. That's kind of counterproductive because nobody's going to want to publish your sequel if the first book doesn't do really well. So write the first book, make it the best as you can. And then if it does well, you can come back with the sequel thing. Every time I've written a sequel, I never started out thinking, I'm going to end up writing a sequel. So, like, Be Kind was supposed to be a standalone book. It did really well. And then I just had Be Strong come out. And I think it's more of a follow-up book than a sequel. It's the exact same cast of characters. You see the same kids that we saw in Be Kind, but we're focusing on a different one. And the plus is you kind of know the universe you're writing in, the characters. Like, it was kind of like running into old friends when I went to write Be Strong. But there's also a little bit more pressure because, the first book did well, and you don't want to, like, create a picture book that's like the picture book version of the movie Speed 2. I mean, you want it to be good. You want to be something that you would feel proud of, even if the first book didn't exist. So I guess if your sequel isn't something that is good enough to be published, even if the first book didn't exist, you probably shouldn't be doing it. And then I wrote a sequel to Sophie Squash, which again was never intended, but Sophie did so well. And then I wrote Sophie Squash Go to School, where, Sophie takes her squash baby to school and finds out that her classmates don't really see the appeal of having a friend that's, well, it's technically a fruit, but so that's how that sequel ended up going. So yeah, I think you need to, like, kind of let go of the expectations for, the success book 1 had. Focus on writing something really strong and really good. Yeah.
Okay, it's time now. We're going to round 4.5 or something, the speed round.
Speed round, where we are going to share more books than you can possibly imagine, and you will get a list later.
We'll get a list, trust me.
Are you ready? This is the fun part. Okay.
Okay, and I will start with a question. A picture book that made you laugh out loud. Go, Pat.
We Don't Eat Our Classmates by Ryan Higgins. And I have to admit, this was on the New York Times bestseller list forever. I resisted because if everybody liked it, how good could it be? I was wrong. It's hilarious.
Okay, I'm going to go with my current read, which was Not Little. Here we go, by Maya Myers, illustration by Juan Yum. I had so much fun with this book. Who doesn't know what it's like to, at some point, have been smaller than everyone else? And let me tell you, this young woman is tenacious. I loved it. I love the friend. Oh my God, just want a hug. And it made me laugh out loud. I mean, it's just so fun. I love it. So, Not Little, everyone. All right, 1 down. Ready?
Picture book that made you tear up.
Oh gosh. All right, this is easy. Oh my God, The Rough Patch, y'all. Oh my God, seriously. I cried so hard. It got me in all the places. This book is beautiful. There are so many beautiful books, but this one really just, Zeke, go, your turn.
Okay, Watercress by Andrea Wang.
Oh, it's so good.
I heard Andrea read this before it was a book. She read just the manuscript draft at a conference I was at. I sat in the back of the room and I cried. And then once I saw the illustrations by Jason Chen, more tears.
I know, tears, so many tears. Okay, now, 3 picture books you think every classroom should have. I don't have them all, so Zeke's gonna go first.
Grace for President by Kelly DiPuccio. Okay, this is a picture book that explains the freaking Electoral College in a way that anyone can understand. Plus, it's a perfectly executed character-driven story. This is like a perfect picture book. Everybody ought to have it. And then Little Libraries, Big Heroes by Miranda Paul tells the story of little free libraries, which are a huge deal in Wisconsin and around the country. It's the whole history of the guy who got the idea and started it. And then Each Kindness by Jacqueline Woodson. Beautiful. I mean, I wrote a book about kindness, but this is the book about kindness.
Yes.
Beautiful story about the issues of what it means to be a friend and what to do when you haven't been one.
I'm so sorry, I don't have my books with me, but they will be on the list. It's because, like many books, I give them away through my nonprofit. One that I think every classroom should have are We Are the Water Protectors, written by Crowl, illustrated by Michaela Gold, I apologize. Every classroom should have this book. Separate is Never Equal, Sylvia Mendez and her family's fight for desegregation by Duncan Tonateeth. Duncan has a very specific art style, and the story is something that creates conversation, and I think it's a wonderful book. The third choice would be, we were debating this, Lubna or Lubna, and Pebble.
Oh, I've got that one. I've got that one.
Flip it up, written by Wendy Mendor, illustrated by Daniel Agnes.
Beautiful book.
The narrative. This is a conversation starter. All these books that they're ways in which we continue these conversations, build empathy, and have wonderful learning moments. I love those books. They need to be in every classroom. Every classroom. All right, 3 picture books with art that astounded you. Pat, go.
All the World, art by Marla Frazee, text by Liz Garten Scanlan, One Caldecott honor shouldn't be all that surprising. Beautiful beyond measure, and also shows how much art can elevate. Liz's text is a beautiful poem, but the art adds at least half the story.
And I'm gonna flip one up. All Around Us. All Around Us is so beautiful. I love this book by Gonzalez, illustrated by Adriana M. Garcia. Beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. And go, Zeke, what do you got?
Selway, illustrated by Vashti Harrison. Beautiful. I love Vashti Harrison. She's got an Instagram feed that you should follow if you don't, and everything she draws is lovely. This book is no exception.
Right here I have And the House in the Night, written by Susan Marie Swanson, illustrated by Beth Cromes, I believe is correct. I was so surprised by this art. I love this art. It is a book that is not probably as popular right now, but I absolutely loved it. This was great.
Right, and this is mine, but Eliza Wheeler is an art rock star, and I mean, I love all of her art, but she knocks it out of the park on this. She draws light better than any illustrator I've ever run into, and yeah, Eliza Wheeler, anything she draws.
When we were talking about books that you can have conversations about hard things, this was it. Unspeakable, The Tulsa Race Massacre, written by Carol Boston Weatherford, illustrated by the late Floyd Cooper. This is one of those books that reaches in, that has those conversations. And it was, it's definitely one of those I want in classrooms as well across the country. This is how we have those conversations, and the art is stunning. Yeah.
Okay, 3 picture books that taught you something you did not know.
1, hello, Joan Proctor, Dragon Doctor. I mean, it sounds good when you say it. I love this book. I love this book. I learned so much, and even by the end, the thing I kept wondering is, when we get to the end, I don't want to give anything away, but I was like, what happened to the Komodo dragon? I wanted to know. I love this. This is such a beautiful story about this woman's life, and a very women who aren't often recognized in the sciences.
How Many Seeds in a Pumpkin? This one has been out for a bit, but it's a great combination of a character-driven story with tons and tons of facts and a great classroom activity that any classroom could replicate as long as they're willing to make things a little messy. I adore this book.
It's a great book. I have to throw up The World is Not a Rectangle. Love this book to infinity and beyond. I love the illustrations. I love the writing. It just took me on a journey, and I learned so much that I did not know about architecture and this particular woman. And I recommend this for every classroom.
Okay, nonfiction, Stand Straight, Allocate, the true story of a woman who grew to be over 7 feet tall. It's an amazing story, and this was way back, and in the end papers show what was her actual shoe size like?
What?
And,
What?
how big was her actual hand? So you can, as a kid, put your hand there. I read this at the library once, and I was surrounded by kids wanting to put their hand by this image and see, how their hand compared to Allocate's. Just amazing, amazing picture book.
Now I want to put my hand there. Okay. Vamos, let's go to the market. If you're not reading Raoul III, what is going on? We should be reading him. He is exploding on the scene, and rightly so. This is so interactive. Young people love this book. I love this book. It, brings together, comic book vibes and all this. This is fresh, it's new, and it's going to be a TV series. So come on, everybody, let's go to the market. Love this book.
Okay. Martini and Chrissy, the world's greatest sports rivalry, about the tennis rivalry between Chris Evert-Lloyd and Martina Navratilova. And it's written by Phil Bildner, and it's got voice to spare. The voice in this picture book is better than almost anyone I've ever read, and it has tons of wonderful specs.
Okay.
Books that we want to read out loud. Your favorite book to read out loud?
Yep. Somehow I got off my book course, but let's go.
Okay, so I've got I Am Cow, Hear Me Moo by Jill Esbaum. This is hilarious to read out loud. It's funny, funny, funny. It rhymes, and the rhyme is absolutely perfect, which is really hard to do in a picture book. And you can read this out loud with vim and verve and vigor.
Oh my God, y'all, this is for this category. Vamos, let's go to the market. No wonder Zeke was so crazy. Why she was looking at me like, why are you making this right now? This is the read aloud book. I'm so sorry. I was going so fast that I skipped it. This is it. Okay, now go Zeke.
Okay, so then I've got The New Girl and Me by Jackie Robbins. This has been around for a while, but this is a book I often have read to middle schoolers where initially they're kind of like, but then they just get sucked in because it's all about making a friend and overcoming anxiety. And it's a great conversation starter for kids of all ages.
Okay, since I don't have these two with me, 7, 8, 9, written by Tara Lazar, illustrated by
Awesome book.
McDonald. Never has it been so fun to hear the story of how the number 7, 8, the number 9. It's so great. I recommend it. It's such a good read aloud. And
I held up Zombie in Love before, which I can't find, but Zombie in Love is like, I've read Zombie in Love out to executives at an insurance company at my day job to teach them how to write better corporate memos. And they all look at me like, why are you? But afterwards, they were like, that was a great book, Zombie in Love.
The other one would be Punk Farm, written by Jarrett J. Help me with the last name so I don't mess it up.
I can't say that last name properly.
But we did write it down, and I don't want to butcher it, but Jarrett J.K.
Sorry, Jarrett.
National Book Award. Punk Farm is so fun to read. It's so fun to read. It's so fun to read. Now, 3 picture books you think more people should know about. Go, Pat.
Okay, this one's old. This is Wanda's Roses by Pat Burson, but it's like the perfectly structured picture book. It's a great story about a kid making a difference in their community and being empowered to, affect positive change. Wanda's Roses.
The fantastic flying books of Mr. Morris Lussamore, written by William Joyce, illustrated by Joe Blum. I love this book so much. Oh my God, it's about books. It's about story. It's about time. It's about words. Read this book. I love it. I wish you knew about it, and you probably do, but now you know more. There you go. Go.
Connect into the World by Kokalia Yang and C.O. Kim. Wonderful, beautiful, gorgeous book about a girl and who sort of becomes friends with an elderly couple that lives across the street. And it's got love and death and life and rebirth. And it's loosely based on something that happened to the author and her family. It's just, there's not another picture book out there right now like this.
I will come up with an older book, Maggie's Monkeys from Candlewick Press by the late Linda Sanders. Anyone who's had a sibling will understand this story in dealing with imaginative characters that exist in your fridge. Maggie's Monkeys.
You make me scared to open my fridge. Okay, so this is Where'd My Joe Go by Jill Esbaum. This is also loosely based on a real story about a truck driver whose dog hopped out of the cab when he was stopped at a truck stop. The driver didn't know, drove away. The poor dog was left behind.
No.
They were reunited, but this is told from the point of the view of the dog who just wants his Joe to come back.
Oh, I want to read that.
It made me cry. It did.
I want to read it. Not mine is going to be Dusk Explorers. I literally just picked this up a day ago. Written by Lindsay Leslie, illustrated by Ellen Rooney. For all of us who grew up in a time before cell phones and we used to go out and explore at night and fireflies and play and engage in the world, I'm telling you, not only that, I mean, seriously, it is so beautiful to look at. Okay, that's not the right one. It is so beautiful to look at, and it's such a beautiful, fun story. So yes, I wish you knew about Dusk Explorers, and now you do. All right, Zeke, go. Three picture book.
That makes you think, wow, I wish I would have written that.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Your Mama. I wish I'd written this. It just got longlisted for the National Book Award. Not only do I adore the writer, but I adore this story, and I would have loved this story when I was a kid. So yes, this one for sure. Your Mama.
10 Beautiful Things by
Oh,
Melody Griffin. It's about a girl leaving her family to go live with her grandmother for reasons that aren't specified, but aren't good. And it's about finding 10 beautiful things, even when life doesn't seem so beautiful.
I love that book so much. Now we're going to some rhyming picture book. Go, Pat.
Rhyming picture book, Federico and the Wolf by Rebecca Gomez. Retelling of Little Red Riding Hood. Little Red is a boy. He's got a red hoodie rather than a cape. He's riding his bicycle to visit his grandfather, runs into the wolf. Amazing picture book retelling. Perfect rhyme. Wonderful to read out loud. Federico and the Wolf.
I like What If. Let's just call it for what it is.
Yeah, What If is awesome.
We all know, what if this happened? What if that happened? I love reading this book. I love the rhyme of it. I love the illustrations, and I love the journey. I'm telling you right now, what if?
Samantha Berger and Mike Corrado.
Thank you. And I love Mike. Oh my God. Adore Mike. Love her. Okay. Classic picture book goes, Pat.
Okay, classic picture book. I've got two. I've got This Rabbit Belongs to Emily Brown by Krista Crowl, which is like, oh my, it's perfect. It's this hilarious story about a girl and her rabbit, and the Queen of England wants to steal the girl's rabbit, but she can't because it belongs to Emily Brown.
Well, yeah.
And then The 10th Good Thing About Barney by Judith Bjorst, who's my inspiration for why I even write picture books. Classic, beautiful picture book about the death of a cat.
Oh my God. And
That should never die.
You have the picture book that I'm going to say. So you need to hold it up, The Snowy Day.
Oh,
I don't have it because I've given it away. The Snowy Day is a classic. It's a beautiful story, and you just have to have it in your life. I love it. Picture books that here we go. Picture books that are your go-to baby shower gift. See,
I've got two. Okay, My Heart Fills with Happiness by Monique Grace Smith and Julie Flett. Beautiful. It's a board book. You can get it as a regular one, but it's all about the little things that make you happy, and it's gorgeous. And then I give out Owl Babies because Sarah Percy and Bill, Your Mama Will Always Come Back. It's gorgeous.
I don't have the one the first one I'll start with, but it is called, not surprisingly, based on my life story, Baby Kiss, as in Kiss the Band, a book about colors by Running Press, illustrated by Binta Chan, I believe is correct. And if not, I apologize for butchering that. So the next one would be Rain Before Rainbows. Oh my God, it's beautiful. It's
beautiful, lovely book.
It was a study. I loved it. You must have. It's a must have. It's a must have. I love that. Take that to the baby shower. And maybe it seems a little different, but I'm a different kind of person at the baby shower. So here we go. My Poppy Has a Motorcycle.
Great book.
Love this book. Love this book. Love this book to infinity and beyond, and culture and story, and it has a sense of comic book and everything. I'm going to a baby shower. This is what I'm taking. All right, go Zeke.
3 picture books that inspire activism and strength.
Okay. You go first.
Okay, I've got Pies from Nowhere. This is a story from the Montgomery bus boycott about a woman who made pies for everybody who was doing the work of protesting, and how they did it even though they weren't supposed to, and kind of surreptitiously, but it made a difference. Pies from Nowhere. And then I've got Preaching to the Chickens, which is a story of John Lewis as a child when he would preach sermons to the chickens he was in charge of taking care of on his family farm.
And I'm going to say here, Change Sings just came out this week. I happened to go over and grab it. Love. I love Amanda Gorman, love Lauren Long. And this book does not miss. This is how we create young activists. The other thing to say, I do love Carol Boston Weatherford, is Voice of Freedom.
Yeah.
Blue Hammer. It's just, this is how we have, this is another one of those where we have conversations about, how do we inspire change in the world and keep, not just inspire it, but create it. And then last but not least, I do not have it in front of me, is Drum Dream Girl, How One Girl's Courage Changed Music. That it's the lyricalness of the story of itself and this young girl in Cuba. It is a must read nonfiction. Love activism.
Okay, and now we're moving into 3 picture book creators you especially admire.
You and you. Me,
well, besides that, other people.
Hashtag just kidding. All right, you go.
All right, so I've got Dan Santat, who has a zillion books. He draws, he writes, he's awesome. He's a kind human being. This is After the Fall, which is a beautiful retelling of Humpty Dumpty. It's an ode to, anxiety and overcoming your fear and flying. So anything by Dan Santat.
Okay, and I've already said this, but anything by Carol Boston Weatherford. Absolutely anything. I adore her writing. I adore her. You go.
Julie Fogliano. I think Julie is the most talented picture book writer writing manuscripts today. If you want to see a whale, The House That Once Was, and then Spring, she's got tons. She uses language more creatively and unexpectedly than any other picture book I know. She's the one picture book creator who I will buy whatever she creates without even cracking the cover just because she did it.
Wow, that's bold. I keep talking about this book. This is my third time up as a charm. Anything by Raoul III. Raoul III he's doing something very different, and I love his storytelling. So he's definitely someone I admire.
All right, and then I don't have books by this person because I've given them all away. Joyce Wan writes, or creates, draws, and creates beautiful board books for kids. They're sweet, they're charming, they're lovely, they're unicorns and cupcakes, and they're just the sweetest books ever. She has a whole series of them. I give them also as baby shower gifts. Joyce Wan rocks.
And also, Joyce Wan is going to be on our new series. It's going to be on Instagram at Pinata Director, which is called Off the Cuff, and it'll be this week with Kevin Adler.
So yeah, we'll watch our social media feeds and tune in and see us talk to Joyce.
The third one I would say is Andrea Wang. I love what Andrea Wang puts on the page. I'm sorry, I don't have her books in front of me because I give them away.
Watercress, I held it up before.
I know, you hold it up and I cried. I love Andrea Wang's work, and I cannot wait to see what more work she is going to produce in the years to come. 3 picture books you're excited to read in the fall. Go, Pat.
Okay, Thankful. This just came out. It's a great story. You can use it obviously around Thanksgiving, but you can use it at any time during the year. It has absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous, gorgeous art by Samantha Cotterill, words by Elaine Vickers. This is her first picture book.
I know.
I read this one. I love it. Becoming Vanessa by Vanessa Brantley Newton. Beautiful art. I mean, the art in this book is just amazing. It's like, I don't exactly know how she did it, so I don't want to say, but to me, it looks like a combination of collage and acrylic, but I could be wrong. Sorry, Vanessa, but the art is beautiful no matter how she made it. And then one that I don't have, I have it on hold at my library. It just came out, and it's Nikki Nakayama, A Chef's Tale in 13 Bites by Debbie Mashiko Florence, nonfiction story about a famous Japanese chef. Can't wait to read it.
Well, unlike you, the books I want to read, I don't have access to at all. The 1619 Project, Born on the Water, written by Nicole Hannah-Jones and Renee Watson, illustrated by Nicholas Smith. Very excited to read this book. Everybody in the Red Brick Building, written by Ann Winter, illustrated by Ogi Morta. Is that correct? OGE. I don't know. I'm terrible. I'm a writer who struggles with pronunciation, and it doesn't matter. And then last but not least, it just released My Two Border Towns, written by David Bowles, illustrated by Erica Minza. Those are the 3 books that I'm very excited. If I'm gonna only get to pick 3, those are the 3, but I want to pick so many more.
Well, that's the thing, because we didn't have much overlap in our lists. And if you had asked another picture book writer, there's so many books like I could have mentioned that I didn't, but we will send a list of the ones we did. I'm going to put a picture of my book stack on my Twitter feed at Pat Z. Miller. And I guess now we're up to the question portion of the program.
Woo! That's what I call it.
I know. I need to
wow, that was amazing, you two. I am excited. Somebody in the comments wrote, I can't wait to go to the library after this. That was wonderful.
That's our goal.
If people want to add to the Q&A, we'll get to your questions. Somebody had written a question in chat, and it says, I hear agents and editors in conferences discourage the writing of picture books for older readers. And so Pat, you and E had talked about how they can be great conversation starters. So do you have any response to that comment?
Well, I've never heard that. And I think picture books, their primary audience can be for younger kids, but they can also be used for older readers. So I don't think you have to set out saying, I'm going to write a picture book for older readers. You write a strong universal picture book that can also be used for older readers.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Okay, as we're waiting for some questions to come in, I have one. So you had mentioned early on, everyone thinks they can write a picture book. Can you talk a little bit more about why you think that's the case? And what should you do if you come across someone? Should you give them advice? Should you just smile and be like, good for you? Like, what should you say?
Well, I think people think they can write picture books because they're short. So, how hard could it be to write something so short? Or they read it and they say, well, there's just so few words. I could knock that out in an afternoon without realizing that, getting to the few beautiful words is hard.
Exactly.
I think that's part of it. And then I think also, especially people, if you've read books to kids, it seems like it would be a fun thing to do, to write something that a kid would read and fall in love with. So I think that's why I get that a lot from people. And
Yep.
so I sort of have a standard response, hey, it's great. Writing for kids is a wonderful career, which it is. And then I refer them to some resources like the Society for Children's Book Writers and Illustrators, Writing Children's Books for Dummies by Harold Underdown, who's speaking later today, and I try to get them on that path. I figure I can be the encouraging voice. And then if they care enough to dig into those two resources, that they will find out that it's maybe harder than they think.
It is a lot harder than most people think. And having the talent to do it is one thing, but then having the sort of tenacity to be a finisher is another. And you have to be willing to go draft after draft after draft. And I think people just look at it and think it's like a Hallmark card that they write 2 or 3 sentences and genius arrives. And you really have to dig in. For me, I've learned it's a lot like novels or filmmaking. You have to understand what's the story? What's the focus? You and I were just discussing this. What is, streamline? What is the story? You can't jump around from this theme to that theme. It has to know what it's going to be, right? We were just talking about this.
We were.
The story has to know what it's going to be, and you have to know what it's going to be. And you can't put 3 different books into one picture book. You know what I mean? And we talk about this a lot, that's a first timer often will have it's a character driven, but it's got poetry. Now it's about weather. It's like, wait, what?
No, you have to have a focus. And I always say you have to pick and commit. What's the focus of your picture book? You commit to that. And then anything that doesn't fit that focus is not part of your book, no matter how cool it is.
It goes into the other book. You put it.
I wrote a blog post about that too.
Yeah.
Picturebookbuilders.com.
You did say the tighter writing is the dark side. And then you had that, that little ominous chuckle afterwards. But you're right. Like you said how it made you a better writer for.
Oh, it did.
Yeah.
I'm a better novelist because of the work that I've done in trying to be a better picture book writer and to being to really hone in on that. I can say I'm a better novelist and I think it even affects my lens and the way I look at film. So yeah.
Wow, that's interesting.
And I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just gonna say, so we had another question from the chat and it says, Pat suggested not to rush to submit a manuscript. When do you both think you should submit? When your critique partners say they love it, is there some other marker? What would the two of you suggest?
Well, okay, so I have a couple things. First of all, Kate Messner has a beautiful blog that I linked to on my website about how maybe the first thing that you write isn't necessarily the best. And she goes into great detail about why that's true and why sometimes the best thing you can do is write something, temporarily set it aside and go write something else because you grow and evolve as a writer and you learn. That's definitely worth reading. But in terms of how do you know when it's ready? Hopefully you're in a critique group or you have people you're exchanging manuscripts with, who aren't just your friends or your mom or your aunts, but people who, are also committed to writing for kids, and you can get feedback from them. And you need to kind of listen to it and consider it. You don't have to take it all, but you at least need to be willing to consider the fact that your manuscript might need more work. Then I always suggest, setting it aside and coming back to it after a month, because you're going to look at it with fresh eyes and go, oh, I could, change this or make this better. But in terms of how do you know when it's ready to submit, it's hard. I mean, sometimes you don't know until, like I did, you send out stories that you think are done and you get either rejections or no response. And then, that tells you something. That tells you have to, give it some more effort. I really wish someone would invent the app where you could just download your story. And if it were ready, it would start flashing and it would tell you, but it's really, I think I've done all I can on this. I've given it everything I have. I don't know what else I could do with it. I'm going to send it out and see what happens.
And I want to say also that the thing about the critique is if you have a critique group, it has to be a group of people who get you. And if you find that across the board, you're really, that was something early on when I tried critique group. It didn't always work for me because some of it didn't work for me in the sense that I was in the wrong groups.
Yeah, you got to be in the right group.
Where I was going, and they have to see where you're going, and they have to see if you're going to take risks that they don't try to. There's a difference. It's a balance, right? Because you need to listen to that feedback, and you need to be open and not defensive, and say, what can I learn from this experience? And then the other part is, do they see sometimes if you're taking risks, you're like, but I think I'm taking a risk of something new and different. And it's like this and this. And you have to decide, is your new and different working, right? And so part of it is, you know, you have to trust your instincts, and the other is making sure you have a group of people who know who you are as a storyteller and where you want to go. And I'm going to go back just 1 second and just say, and read.
That's really the best thing you can do. The
I-
best thing.
Admittedly, I'm a natural storyteller. I came out the womb that way, apparently. But I would say that in the study of picture books, literally sitting down, getting your pile, and it's not just reading once, it's like reading, put it to the moment, come back to it again, understand how it was formed. What is the structure? Is it character? Is it poetic? Is it, you know, what lyrical? You know, and that I think that's what's going to make you if you're a good writer, it's going to make you a great writer if you're really listening in and seeing how is story created. And yes, you can learn the rules and then break them, but you got to understand them first.
Right, because I think a lot of people who write their first picture book manuscript draft, they don't even know that there is a structure for picture books. And yeah,
Exactly.
You can, like you said, you can tweak it, you can play with it, you can break it on occasion, but you need to know the basics. And yeah, you have to know what you're doing first.
Mm-hmm.
So it's great that you talked about knowing the rules and understanding them and then allowing to break them, because our next question is asking about, it's a word count question. And so as already established writers, I mean, it can be hard for you, I would think, to answer this question because you have a following, people love your work, but then you go to these conferences and you hear, you know, 500 is really the sweet spot. And so someone is asking, is there a market for picture books over 500 words as already established authors?
Done right.
Yes, if it's done right. Because, okay, it is true picture books have gotten shorter over time. That is true.
Yes.
It is true that 500 is sort of a magical number tossed out. But I've heard editors say, and I agree, it's like you want the right number of words. When I talk about this, I always talk about asking how many words a picture book should be is like asking how big should a dog be. A Chihuahua should be a different size than a Great Dane. So it goes back, what is your book trying to do? Is it trying to be a Chihuahua? Is it a little board book? Or is it trying to be a Great Dane? Is it Library Lion? Is it a nonfiction thing that has, you know, a ton? So what are you trying to do? What's the right size for that? And then you want to make sure that there's not an extra word in it. My favorite quote from Susan Hirschman, who used to be a editor for Green Willow, she was talking about Kevin Henkes, who is like, you know, the god of picture book writing. In his first book, she said it had a beginning, it had a middle, it had an end. The pacing was superb. There wasn't an extra word in it. And that's what you want, no matter how long your book is. You don't want to cut it to get it arbitrarily to 500 words. But did every word earn its way into your manuscript? Does every word have to be there? And if that's true, it can be longer. Like Library Lion is almost 1,000 words. It's the perfect picture book. And I would defy you to go through and find one word you could take out. So if you can truly say that about your book, which is hard to do, but if you can truly say that, it can be longer. I mean, Lupe, I'm not saying Lupe is perfect, but it's about 700 words. You could say it's perfect, but it's about 700 words.
And let me tell you, I had to fight for every one of them because
I was the word police. We went around and around on this.
Like, choo, choo, with the red marker, choo, choo. And I was like, listen, lightsaber marker, these words have to be here. It's
and I was like, no, they don't.
And I'd be like, it's the emotional arc of the character. And she's just like, really? And then, but that was part of our collaboration.
Yeah, that was part of where we got to the good spot.
And, you know, and so, but we found that sweet spot. And, you know, for her, that's a long book. And for me, I'm like, really? That's not even a
she writes. Yeah.
You two are hilarious. I'm enjoying this so much. And Pat, I loved that. Is it a Chihuahua? Is it a Great Dane? Yeah, I think we have time for one more question. And so this is a pantsing versus a plotting question. Do you have a plot already when you start a story, or do you frame it in the process?
Can you say that one more time?
Yeah. Do you have a plot ready when you start a story, or do you frame it in the process?
Do you want to start or do you want me to start?
Go ahead. I'll let you go.
I rarely have a plot. I'm much more of a pantser. I usually have a couple words, like a phrase, or I have a feeling, or I have a vague idea, and I sit down and I start writing. Usually, and then it just sort of evolves and it changes. So yeah, I don't plot as much as I pants.
I plot pants.
You plot your pants?
I plot my pants. All the things, because it just depends on the narrative. You know, coming from a playwriting background, there was, you know, and poetry, but especially playwriting, it was very dialogue driven, and that's very much in my novels. with like Lupe, you know, I knew the little snippets of dialogue and the little things like that. And I knew kind of the entries, and then with the girl, you know, can build anything. It was like an emotion. It was like that big wave, and like, you know, you're like a crescendo. It was literally like writing an orchestration. It was, you know, a piece of music. And so I think, but on average, I think it's like a half and half for me. Like you know, some of it's the plot. I'm not saying the plot's perfect either. Let's be clear. You know, Pat's read my writing. So, but yeah, I mean, I think it's a plot. What is it? Plot tense? Is that what it is? Plot tense. Is that what it would be? Plots and pans?
Yeah, you could create your own word.
So both. I think you know, you have to find what works for you though. And when you do, stick with that and trust that process until it doesn't work anymore, and then try something else. I'm a real believer in process changes from, you know, where you start and where you end. When I wrote Lupe versus when we're writing the fourth book together, you know, my process has changed immensely, and it's about understanding that.
Whatever works for you, as long as you can get there,
Yes.
you know, get there in the way that works for you.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the wonderful advice, the wonderful conversation. Your enthusiasm over picture books has me all hyped up. Now, thankfully, I can just like run downstairs and start looking through all of these books.
Yes.
So thank you so much. And I just want to remind everyone, in about 15 minutes, we're going to start our middle grade celebration of picture books with author Rajani LaRocca and her agent Brent Taylor. And then later this afternoon, starting at 2, we've got Harold Underdown, we've got Eileen Robinson, and we've got author Crystal Allen taking us behind the scenes.
Can I say one more thing?
Always, yes, of
Just
course.
about passion for picture books. Okay, so I have 2 daughters. They're both basically grown. But when one of them was maybe around 10 or 11, I was suggesting a picture book that I thought she ought to read to help her with an issue she was going through. And she looked at me and she said, "Mom, picture books can't solve every problem." And I said, "Yes, they can." And so she doesn't still agree with me, but that is my view on life. Picture books can at least help solve any problem.
Wow.
That's wonderful.
Yeah. I got nothing.
Let me just add my word of thanks on behalf of the Norfolk Library for this fantastic program. Pat and EE, it was great to see you. Thanks for getting up as early as you did in Central Time to join us. And thank you to all the participants for joining us today for the first of our programs celebrating children's picture books.
Thank you so much. It was so fun.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Welcome. And the link and video will be coming out. So just wait for that. All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.